Well, good afternoon, everybody. I am Mauricio Vera, Assistant National Director for the Veteran Institute for Procurement. I'd like to welcome and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, which is Close It in Q4, 10 Things You Must Do Now. Couldn't be more timely as we're entering the fourth quarter. We have some absolutely critical information for you. Today's webinar was developed to help veteran businesses accelerate growth in the federal marketplace. As many of you know, VIP offers 4 different curriculums to give veteran-owned small businesses the tools they need to win government contracts. Participants receive hands-on, market-based instruction that helps establish best business practices for federal government contracting. And of course, the best part is the program is offered at no cost. For more information, please visit our website, www.nationalvip.org. Today's webinar is brought to you by the Veteran Institute for Procurement in partnership with the SBA and the Veterans Business Outreach Center, or VBOC. The slides and video recording from today's webinar will be made available on the VIP website as well as emailed to you. Now the best part. I am thrilled to introduce our distinguished speaker for this afternoon, and that's Ms. Judy Bradt, CEO of Summit Insight. Let me tell you a little bit about Judy. She brings over 30 years of expertise in federal business development and strategy to people who want to grow their federal business. She's an award-winning speaker and consultant and author of the Amazon #1 best-selling book, Government Contracts Made Easier, as you can see it there on your screen. Judy believes that winning federal contractors contractors don't simply have better contract data, more money, or stronger past performance. She's going to show us how winners use those things to build better relationships a lot sooner than everybody else. Her clients include many of the country's top federal contractors, especially in professional services and technology, who use her tools and techniques to reach the federal buyers they were meant to serve. So feel free to submit your questions throughout the presentations in the Q&A box that can be found in your Zoom toolbar. We will also have time at the end for more Q&A. And now it gives me great pleasure to welcome Judy. Judy, take it away, please.
Mauricio, thank you. Amy, Aaron, it's just a joy to be able to return in small measure the service you have given to us and our country. And so with that, welcome to the Q4 Slam. This training's mission is give you the tools and the tactics that my clients have used to win millions in federal business, especially in the fourth quarter of the fiscal year. So this content is most suited for companies that already have some, at least commercial experience and perhaps some past performance in the federal market. It is valuable and practical for every company that is in the federal market. And although this is billed as the Q4 Slam, smart companies are doing these things all year round. So let's dig in. If you will find in the chat, if you haven't already downloaded or gotten a link to the Q4 Slam Action Guide. All right. So so this briefing is a companion to a 64-page action guide that I've built just for you. And this will help you implement all 10 of the tactics that I'm going to be covering here. Get ready to take notes and to take action, because at the end of this session, I'm going to ask you, what one thing do you commit to doing, and by when, to make this happen? So here's what we're going to cover. We're going to cover how to power up your goals. We'll cover the 12X factor. You'll get in detail 10 tips to close business in federal Q4. And I hope that we can get through this in enough time to do Q&A as well. All righty. So that's the deal. Your company has made a commitment to be in the federal market, and this training is my gift to you to support your plan, because you're committed to achieving your goals and to winning the work and bringing it home. So the key is all about action. And face it, fiscal year end is big. I've lived through it since 1988 when I was a government buyer. I know how it feels to wait most of the year for funding approval and suddenly have just 8 weeks to do a big project I wanted to start 8 months ago. Even though I was working for the Canadian Embassy in Washington, D.C., I discovered I had a lot in common with my colleagues down the street who worked at U.S. federal agencies and state and local government for that matter. Ever meet or maybe been a federal buyer, program manager, acquisition professional, or even a small business specialist? Most of the ones I've met, and I've met thousands in just about every department and agency, truly love what they do. Contrary to cliches, most of the federal employees I've met aren't procrastinators by nature. They're creative, dedicated, passionate go-getters. They've got a ton to do, and most of them don't have control over the timing when they get the money they need to buy the things that they need from you and me to do that. The unique thing about government spending is a lot of the time, if the money doesn't get spent by the end of the fiscal year, it literally disappears. The authority to spend it goes away. And the buyers have to start all over again with a new budget request that can put them in pretty much that same place as they're in now, 12 months from now. So they're just as motivated to spend money as you are to win their business. After your first year in the federal market, bidding and marketing and going to meetings and conferences and watching the wins go to somebody else, you figure out pretty fast that the average federal buyer who's buying more than a bucket of bolts, whether they need services, products, or both, usually has a pretty good idea of who they want to work with when they're ready to buy. Because people do business with people they know, and people do business with people they like, and people do business with people they trust. And that know and like and trust thing takes time. As fiscal year end approaches, the buyers don't have time for complicated competitions if they don't need to do them. They want to follow the rules, make it easy, and make the low risk choice. All we need to do is have the right conversation with the right person early enough and stay in touch, so we're still their top choice when the money opens up. Because I know how challenging this is for buyers and for sellers and how much spending happens at the end of the fiscal year, I created this briefing and these resources for you. You ready? Let's do this thing. Let's start with goals. What would you like to achieve by September 30th? What are your goals for Q4? Drop it into the Q&A. I'd love to see it because we're going to have some real activity here. So I'd like you to write into the Q&A at least one goal that you would like to achieve in the federal market by this September 30th. Think of them in terms of not just that big dollar figure, but also terms like these: leads, number of referrals, number of proposals you expect to write, number of add-on modifications you'd like to get on a contract you have, number of teaming partners you'd like to approach, number of under-the-radar orders. Because otherwise, that journey to September 30th can feel like you're swimming in the ocean with no mileposts. A sense of momentum, a sense you're making progress, makes all the difference. Here are the 2 reasons why this matters. First, let's take a lesson from Harvard. A study of a business school class revealed that 84% of the class had set no goals at all. 13% of the class had written goals, but no concrete plans. 3% of the class had written goals and concrete plans. 10 years later, those with written goals but no plans were making twice as much as those with no goals at all. But the 3% of the class that had written goals and a plan were making 10 times as much as the other 97% of the class. So take a moment, write down goals. Even if you don't do it right now, write down one, but make the commitment to writing down your 4th quarter goals by the end of this week. This training is a tactics toolbox full of proven ideas that each support specific kinds of goals. We're going to cover these 10 topics, and by the end of the session, your goal is to choose the top 4 tools you'll use first that best fit your goals, whether you're expressing those in terms of leads, referrals, proposals, add-ons, teaming, or under the radar. I suggest that you pick one to focus on for each of the next 4 weeks so that by the time July 1st rolls around, you're well on your way to your goals. So let's start with who we know first, because the easiest way that we can get business is to take a look at who we've already got in our sights, people we've been talking to, people we know. So first, let's think about who we know and ask ourselves, is there anything coming down the pipeline with those current customers? Maybe we want to come back to them, Have a soft conversation. How are you doing? What's been going on? Start with your client list, your current contacts list, and you'll tap what I call the 12X factor. Get this. Someone who's already done business with you is 12 times more likely to buy from you again than someone who's never heard of you. Let that sink in. If your big strategy for federal Q4 was to pump out a lot of proposals in response to RFPs that you find online for people you've never met in agencies you've never worked in, you're going to be working 12 times harder than you need to. And your odds of winning any one of those things is in the single digits at best. So, who have you worked with? Maybe they moved to another agency. Yeah, well, track them down. Maybe that person has something going on in their new agency. We need to also consider not only asking them what's coming down the pipeline, but what's on their mind that they're struggling with, that they need, that they may not have a budget for. Enter the wish list. Enter the wish list. Ever make a wish list when you're a little kid with a birthday or holiday coming up, or set up a gift registry for a wedding or a special event, or even have your own wish list on Amazon? Well, federal buyers have wish lists too. All year long, they're making a list and checking it twice, adding some more. Their list is full of things that they like to have happen, but they don't have money for. So what problem does your buyer want to solve that they may not be able to solve this year that right now they don't have money for? That's the wish list. Write it down. Take a note. Sometimes an agency or one of your project managers have something they're challenged with and they don't have money for. Listen up for those challenges, things that come up in conversation. Jot some ideas together just for fun and conversation about how you'd solve that problem. Play with it a little. Start to help them build a budget around a situation they're talking about, what they might need if the money came along. Just this time of year, spring, May, June, July, right now, you can be chatting with people that you know to get started on ideas for wish list buys. The earlier the better. This is still a great time of year to do it. So they don't have a budget. They really wish they could do it. They could have it. They could build it. They could solve it. I need to tell you this is absolutely real. When I worked at the Canadian Embassy, I did hundreds of thousands of dollars of spending. Fiscal year end for the government of Canada is actually March 31st. And so what would happen is, sure as heck, last week of January, someone come racing down the hall saying, hey, I've got $30,000 here. I can help you, I would say. I had what I used to call my February funding fairy file. I always knew who I wanted to do business with and had it all set up and ready to roll the minute the money dropped. Anybody in a federal agency that savvy, they probably got an idea if the money freed up of what they'd like to do and who they'd like to get them to help it. Somebody who knows them, who knows exactly how they want the job done and could have it rolling in no time flat as if they'd been waiting all year to get started, because they have been waiting in the wings all year to get it started. You want to be having one of those conversations right now. Say, one of my clients, Elena Yearly, had been building relationships with someone in housing and urban development. She met somebody at a couple of industry days and just sent them a little note during one of the shutdowns, just saying, hey, I'm thinking of you. I hope you're doing okay. No response required, no nothing. Months later, when she showed up at an event, that person she hadn't seen in months came running down the hall saying, Elena, that blanket purchase agreement finally got funded. We need to talk. That's what can happen when you keep in touch. That's what opened the doors to new opportunities for her. One of the things you're going to want to do when you're talking to your clients is if they don't have the money straight out, ask them. Ask them, what do you say we put together a little white paper of budget and a wish list proposal? Then you'll have it on your desk. And if any last minute money pops up in the last couple of months, we'll be first on the list, and then you can buy some of that with that money. Sometimes the contracting officer will come down the hall and say, hey guys, I got $25,000 for facilities. Hey, I need some chairs. I need that. I need to build out the conference room. I need some AV. Hey, we have some training funds that one of our project managers at one of our primes wants to work with. Can we use some money for that? Remember that anytime government operations experience disruptions or shutdowns, like we've had over several of the last few years that really slow down many of the federal people, your federal humans who have missions and goals, they're worried about completing the projects, meeting the goals that were critical to their careers, to their agencies, to their success. So they may not be coming up and saying right away this in front of you, but the odds are good they're struggling with at least one project that's further behind than they would like. And one of the possibilities to keep open is the idea that you may have a way to offer some support, something that you could do to help them. So let's say you offer professional staffing or administrative or professional services. Maybe for a few weeks, you could place a person temporarily to give a little bit of a go ahead or unjam a project on a critical path. You've got a proposal, an idea, a scope, a budget, a contract vehicle that you suggested that they might want to use. You get all this information together. Your end user has it all in their hand, maybe a 10-page proposal. And the minute the money comes available, they may be able to vie for that money. The critical thing about a wish list quote, though, is if you do it in June or July, you need to stay on top of that customer to make sure your wish list quote is on the top of their pile, that the urgency to get that thing done is at the very top. Because if you don't keep in touch, somebody else is going to write another wish list quote for them. Also, if your competitors have a blanket purchase agreement with your buyer and they haven't spent any money in that BPA because a competitor just let it sit there, all of a sudden the money from that BPA might be able to be moved over for your wish list. So a wish list quote is a very powerful thing to get into their hands. And then if they don't have the money this year, they already have it so they can start using it to budget for next year. So it's something that you know might happen to happen. You're arming them with information. They're actually pretty open to working with you if only the money would show up. Another thing you want to do with your agencies is if they're out of money, they often also are out of time. They don't want to work with you right now. Or even if they do want to work with you, they just can't get anything done right now. Don't be afraid to ask, okay, anybody else at your sister agencies, another office, another one of your regions, another one of your locations? Does anybody else have money in this area where I can serve them? Believe me, they know who has money because people talk to each other. They run into each other. So don't be afraid to ask, not only do you have anything else going on, but are you hearing any rumblings? Do you think anybody else at another regional office in your agency might need some help? These are some things to think about. Does that track with your experience, Mauricio?
Yes, absolutely. I think, you know, the OSDBUs don't, the small business offices generally are aware of opportunities. So I would encourage you to reach out to them especially if you've been working with them already, because they frequently are contacted by either contracting officers or technical people asking for sources because it's year-end money. So I would certainly work with them.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So next, you want to be on the lookout for what I call a shadow opportunity. A shadow opportunity is what's the government looking for or buying before they need what we do. So what if we look in SAM.gov and do a keyword search? Let's say I'm in AV, audiovisual design. So let's say you do a search on the word construction. Scroll down a bit, you start to see the opportunities all over government for construction. So you click on an audiovisual design opportunity. Now remember, if you type in construction, the reason why construction popped up was the word construction was somewhere in the synopsis. So what you're able to do is peel out some information. If you're an AV design company, you can find out some points of contact. You can reach out to them and say, hey, I see you're doing some construction. Is there any element of audiovisual design in this project down the road? If the solicitation has the word construction, we're selling furniture or post-construction cleanup. Again, you might see an opportunity to renovate or clean up after an operations and training facility. We might not get a ton of really specific information that's precisely about what we do, but we can see there's an opportunity for some work that's going to be done at a particular location. We're able to peel out the information, possibly at the bottom of the opportunity, find out what's going on. We'll get some points of contact. If we scroll a bit, so you want to get to the stuff behind the things that we do. I'm going to pause for a second. I want to ask you to drop into the Q&A a couple of words, write down a couple of those ideas that we talked about for the wish list, and jot down at least one keyword that you could search on that represents what I call a shadow opportunity. Something, if they're buying this thing, they're probably going to need what we do later. Okay, drop that in the Q&A. Love to see what your idea might be of a shadow opportunity. You want to follow up with the point of contact at the bottom of the notice and be in touch with them. Now, in the action guide, Again, you've got the link. You can go download that PDF. In that action guide on pages 5 through 9, be ruthless with your pipeline. Get real. Look at whether this is an agency where you've already done work and performed well. They know you, like you, and trust you. And the opportunity is a strong match for your past performance. Put those things on your A list and double down on your commitment to deepen relationships there. Put everything else in priority order on your B list. We've got a few more pages in the action guide about revising your pipeline. So you're going to go on and take a look at some of the opportunities you've been following that aren't looking so good. It's time to take them out with the trash. Keep the information about the point of contact, but it's time to start passing on some of those things that have been wasting your time so you can get back to the work of selling, of relationship building. It's like you're cleaning your closet. Be ruthless with your discards. As Marie Kondo would say, does it spark joy? That's it, not the idea, but the real possibility. If not, set them aside. Maybe some of them you'll recycle. You're just going to say, you know what? This opportunity is not going to fit us for this year, but let's follow up at the point of contact after October 1st because there's always another year. And in some ways that feels good. That one opportunity has been kind of hanging over you. Someone's been teasing you with it like catnip and all your energy and attention's going there and they had no intention of closing that deal. Weed it out. Focus on the ones that you really know that you can win. So action guide pages 10 to 15. I want you to start taking a look at procurement forecasts that the agency have actually out there posted. Many of them are online, but a buyer might also email one to you. Visiting forecasts, I want you to think about a couple of agencies that you'd like to visit. Get specific. I'd rather you go Army Corps of Engineers, Ohio Basin District, that kind of thing. I want you to consider what agencies you're hoping to dig into their forecast a little. Is it going to be VA? Which VISN? Homeland Security? Which component? Transportation, Department of Commerce? Is it going to be Treasury? Or GSA's Public Building Service? Which region? You're going to dive into those forecasts a little and go through it. I would say give yourself a deadline. Let's give ourselves 7 days on that one. Give yourself 4 working days and make the commitment to go through and get those forecasts and start peeling out some names and numbers by agency out of there. Top of the action guide, page 10, add the date by which you're going to finish revisiting forecasting. Every agency is unique. And you'll find in the last 2 pages of the action guide, which is why you want to open this in soft copy, I've included links to the agency's most current forecasts. Large departments like Commerce or Health and Human Services have smaller agencies or components, and each has its own forecast. And so we can look at a big example that has a lot of spend and a subpart. But a word about forecasts. You can download a forecast, find a description and incumbents, but I want you to encourage you to focus on the points of contact. Because even when you're asking about something that's in a forecast, sometimes they're going to feel really uncomfortable and not really want to be very chatty. So remember that, especially if you're seeing something like forecasts for this fiscal year and you've never heard about it before, and it says they're going to do procurement happening in the 4th quarter, be gentle, be thoughtful. And remember that the most important thing, whether you're pulling that contact information out of sam.gov or out of a forecast, make a plan to make friends. Take your time. You're not in a hurry. They don't know you. No matter how wonderful you are, all they see is a great big ball of risk when they meet you for the first time, and they don't like risk. Keep an eye out for those incumbents as well, because many times the incumbents are going to win the recompete. So you may want to team with them. You might want to talk to them further, but a long time before the recompete hits the street. Keep a lookout in the data for what buyers would call the usual suspects that keep showing up on these forecasts. They'll tell us whether or not it's a new requirement or if it's a recompete. Then you can see who the incumbent is. So the other thing to think about is this something for now or something that's going to be happening next year that you could put in the radar? Right now, we're focusing in this training on 4th quarter opportunities, wish list opportunities, and stuff that's under the radar. Some things that are on sam.gov and the procurement forecast everybody can see. But if you get a little piece of work within that, or something that might be following it that they haven't thought of, get in there and talk to them about those items. So, recap of just this first tactic. I encourage you to choose 12 people and ask them these 3 questions. Anything coming out? Hey, have you thought about some items you don't have a budget for, but you'd like to have some sort of help with? And hey, anybody else we should be talking to. We need to call those clients and find out the scoring, not emails, phone calls, get on the phone. We want you to have conversations with people. The biggest overlooked tool you have for success is your phone. All right, so now you've got your keywords, your opportunities. You've written down some of those. You've added your shadow keyword and started to search in SAM.gov. You see a couple of opportunities. You pull the points of contact out at the bottom of the opportunity to follow up with. Click on the opportunity, pull their names out if they look interesting. Put them in your action guide, got them. Put them in the action guide, got them. So next you reach out to them and say, have you thought about what we do? Is that coming next, or have you started talking about it? Who would you call if you're me in this project so we can have a conversation? That gives you a couple of brand new people to tell about what you do. Send your capability statement, let them know you're standing ready to serve. When they're coming up to that need, they might be thinking of it now. Now you thought about it before they did. This is an intensely relationship-based game. By identifying who buys things like what you do, you're making friends with the person instead of chasing an opportunity. So you're committed to uncovering leads by asking for referrals. New opportunities might start with wish list proposals. That could turn into modifications you might work on with a teaming partner your customer already likes, who's got a contract vehicle in place. That becomes what we call an under the radar opportunity. And you might get a couple of new customers from those conversations too. So you've got a lot of ways to move forward to that very first goal you wrote down today. For starters, for just the first week, write down 3 people you know personally whose names just pop out of your head right this minute. Your next win is this. You're going to call them within the next couple of days. All right, write them down. 3 people you already know. Even if there's someone who has told you in the past, I don't buy what you sell, but you've made friends with them because they might know somebody else who buys what you sell. Somebody that you can talk to, somebody you know will answer your calls, even if they've been inviting you to bid and they haven't awarded anything to you yet. That's actually good too. Then add some context here and there and call them. Put a little date in there, maybe by Friday. Friday, you'll call them. Give yourself a goal. That means you're on track. That's what we like to see. It gives you the sense that you're making progress.
Excuse me, Judy.
Yeah.
We have a question in the Q&A. So let me read it to you. From Veronica, it says, most of the time it is very difficult to get the procurement folks on the phone. Even if you have the contact information, most of the time they do not respond. Any suggestions on how to get them on the phone?
Yep, a couple. First, one of the things that people can do differently is not give up so soon. Sometimes I called them last week. I guess I'll call them the week after next. It's okay to make, Mauricio, I'll ask you this when you were in the chair. And the sweet spot between apathy and pestilence is different for each individual human. So when you were in an acquisition management job, how often would it have been okay for someone to just call and leave a message, even if they didn't reach you? Somewhere between, you don't want them calling every hour on the hour, but if they only call twice a year, that's not enough, right? So for you, what would a sweet spot be that it's okay and it's not too much?
For me, it was probably quarterly, I would say, is kind of the sweet spot. But in general, just because I was in the management position, I would usually refer them to the specialists because
so you weren't the frontline buyer is the thing in that job. You were in the management job, right?
Correct. And I would say what I would tell people is if you reach out to somebody on my team and they're not responding, send them a follow-up and copy me and just put it there in a nice way that, I tried to reach out to you, but I know you're busy or whatever. In a nice way, and if you copy me, it will usually get their attention.
I'm going to share a technique. So you'll want to take a note about this. My call team is saying that especially over the last 18 months, there's a cadence that we call double tap. And here's how it works. First of all, in general, you don't expect to get people on the first try. You're going to script. You're going to write down a really concise, maybe 45 seconds at most, script that you're going to use that's very specific to that person in that office. All right. And it's going to mention at least one thing about your company that stands out, something that somebody will remember you for, something easy, and what's in it for them to call you back. Sorry, I missed you. Check your email. It's about Bumpty Bump, and it's Sally Brown 5551212. If I don't hear from you by the end of Wednesday, I'll give you a call back Friday at 10. Now, then you've got your follow-up email queued up to go the minute you drop the voicemail. So it's suddenly something relevant and short and perky is in their email box as well. And then you make, and this is the hardest part, you make the note on your calendar that you're going to call that person at 10 o'clock, their time on Friday, and you do that. You're probably going to get voicemail again. But after about 3 cycles of showing that you do what you say you're going to do, that rises you above the crowd because you're actually building trust by showing that you do what you say you're going to do. So it might be that if you've done your research, you know this person's important, you've got something relevant to ask them and talk to them about, then you might do 3 cycles of that within about a 2-week period, 3 or 4 cycles of that. And you can also then engage the small business specialist, for example, to say, hey, is everything okay with Sally? I've been trying to reach her. Is she still the right person, or has there been a change? Is there something else that I could be doing differently? Now, if this sounds like it takes a lot of work, yeah, it does, which is why you focus on the folks that you know are right. I hope that helps a little bit, Veronica. What do you think, Mauricio?
I think that's helpful. I do have another question,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how do you get work with the small business liaisons to further get you to that customer where you can ask questions about projects? Are FOIA requests needed to interact with any small business liaisons?
You don't need to file a request under the Freedom of Information Act. A lot of the time, not only will it take time, but it may even cost you money to get those things. It is one of the reasons why people pay money for some of those big giant databases, because they've sent all the FOIA requests in. And really, by researching, by digging in using sweat equity, you can get a lot of what you need a lot of the time. The more research you've done, the more helpful the small business specialist is going to be. And so rather than asking a small business specialist to go and find things for you or point you to opportunities, by using some of the techniques that we teach in the VIP program about looking at past contract data, seeing who buys what you do and building relationships rather than looking at what can I bid, that actually the time you invest in researching those buyers and relationships will mean that you're in there ahead of your competition. I hope that helps a little bit. Anything else that's top of the list right now, Mauricio?
No, I think that's it for now. Thank
Okay.
you.
So next tactic, next part of the guide. Now, so when you're looking at where are my best opportunities right now, identify this information: current clients, shadow opportunities, revisiting your pipeline, revisiting the forecasting. These actions will help you drive more leads, more referrals, more proposals, add-ons, teaming partners, and under the radar. So this is a really powerful tactic 1. So we're front end loading. How can I become top of mind in their busy season? The answer to this question helps drive more leads, more referrals, and more opportunities for proposals. Here's how that works. Because your federal buyer's getting inundated with calls from all kinds of people. At least that's what we think. They're getting inundated with calls. At least that's what we think. In reality, we need to start zooming in on what makes us unique and then thread that theme into all of our communications so that our buyers can take that uniqueness and flip it around and turn it into the best values when they're asking for our products or services. Here's how that works. You've heard the phrase best value. I'm going to flip that around and I'm going to use the phrase best values. Maybe you've heard the term unique value proposition or differentiators. I want you to lock in the term best values, because every time you say it, I want you to be thinking not about you, but about them. Every time you say best values, I want you to be rethinking how does what's special about us bring the best possible value to the unique federal buyer right in front of me? Best values need to be quantifiable and provable. Best in breed or world-class doesn't mean anything. You need to express that in terms that are objectively measurable, and ideally you can compare against an industry average. Can you say that your safety record is less than 1.0 EMR? Maybe it's 0.56 in construction. If you're in staffing, you know that the average turnover is what it is for staffing categories or labor categories you're working on. If you can say you have an average turnover of less than 5% over 3 years, or that 80% of your staff has been with you for over 10 years, or that 75% of your professional staff have master's degrees in their specialty, that makes it easier for a buyer to put a statistic like that in the performance work statement or evaluation criteria. And that is how the cake gets baked for you. I want you to roundtable with your team and come up with 5 new, quantifiable, provable best values that you can start talking about. Each email, you're going to leave a different best value message centered on what you're good at, but then come back around to the name of your company so they know who you are. So best values that are quantifiable and provable. Is it speed? Past performance? Is it the software or security clearances, whatever it might be? This exercise helps you kind of identify what you're going to write as well in your SBA Dynamic Small Business Search profile. That's what this part of the action guide is for. Okay. And as well, where can you find yourself in eLibrary? Take a good look at SBA's Dynamic Small Business Search. Are you in there? Is your profile chock full of juicy keywords? Are there ones you want to add? Look up the keywords in your competitors' profiles. Which of those might your buyer be searching on? You want to make sure is in your profile as well. We also need to help them find us, starting with government online platforms. The 2 most basic ways to make sure buyers can find you start with sam.gov. Make sure your system for award management profile is up to date and active. Do you know what your renewal date is? I want you to go in there and update your entity record every 6 months. Doing that is like getting ready to go on a trip and making sure your passport isn't going to expire while you're out of the country. Buyers want to know you're paying attention to this most basic requirement and are never at risk of disqualification for an award simply because you forgot to renew your registration and accidentally went inactive. Second, when you renew your SAM profile, about 20 minutes into the process and just after the screens where you confirm your agreements with all the representations and certifications, you come to a dialog box with the SBA logo asking you if you want to update your record in Dynamic Small Business Search. It's all too easy to go, whoops, I'm out of here. Let me get finished. Why do I care about this database? Wait, when you see that, click that. Go in there because that's the only way you have to update the keywords associated with your SAM record where buyers also search when they're looking for suppliers. Next, let's talk contract vehicles. If you got them, park them in the driveway and shine them up and show them off. If you're on a GSA schedule, then your company has a page in GSA's eLibrary. There's a link at the top of that page. Copy that link, take that GSA schedule number and hot link it to this page because that's your GSA schedule and your pricing. You want to point people to that website for those of you who have a GSA schedule number. All right. If you want it's that GSA schedule number, it's going to be on your capability statement, hot link there as well. And that shows buyers how to find you and takes you right to your terms and conditions. Thousands of GSA schedule holders are at zero sales because they sit and wait for orders. They don't even know how to find themselves on the schedule, let alone their clients knowing how to find them. So if you create the bridge for them to find you quickly, that really makes all the difference. You're going to want to do the same thing for any other contract vehicles you're on, whether it's a prime or a sub. Oasis, T4NG, Seaport NXG, CIOSP, whatever, NASA SOUP. List your contract number and link it to the most specific possible live online landing page that vehicle publishes with information about what your company or your prime offers on that vehicle. Then there's the non-government platforms to be visible on. Remember that your federal buyers are likely to check you out anywhere from 12 to 15 times before they call you. Did you know that now more than ever, the acquisition workforce is much more mobile? So they're looking you up on their phones before they talk to you. They may get your email and wonder, who are these guys? So your online presence has to be strong and complete and consistent across your website, your LinkedIn profile, your supplier profile with any federal agency, and the supplier profile you may have filled out online. Another way to be found is actually to connect with me on LinkedIn, because when you do that, you might be then only one connection away from a federal buyer you want to meet. Because once government employees start connecting with you and you start connecting with them, all their friends can more easily connect with you. And then you're one step closer to so many of the people that you want to meet. Next, ask for referrals and introductions. Remember to ask them, who would you call if you were me? Who else would you talk to? That's not begging. Here's how powerful that is. My friend Jennifer Rhodes, who is Vice President of Business Development at Tagents, had a small project in a DoD office in the Pentagon. From that, she was able to do a small pilot in the Office of the Secretary of Defense for about $10,000. And she finished that and had some good results. But more important, she had that relationship. The project was for records management and capturing email and all kinds of documents. And from that project came a follow-on conversation. And she heard about a need from another entity at DoD who needed a records management system to comply with the National Archives and Records Administration requirements. And so from that, she built what she called a soft capture deck, a semi-generic presentation for an unspecified client. She has just a little information. She built out a phased approach and some planning and kept asking questions so she could get information about who the client really was and the point of contact. And she did some emails, made some phone calls, and then most importantly, she did what she called a drive-by and said, hey, we're going to be in the area. Can we come talk to you? She sat down with the buyer and whiteboarded it out. From that stage, she put together a skeleton of what a proposal would look like, and it turned into close to $1 million of work that was awarded in less than 6 weeks. Tagents delivered that initial project and continued to provide enhancement and was able to do another modification to add work to that in an option year. All of that came from asking the question, who else needs what we do? What's the worst thing that could possibly happen when you pick up the phone? You call a federal human. What? They might say, I don't have time for you, or they never answer. No answer. That doesn't hurt your feelings. It's annoying. It's time consuming. Or you're frustrated about wasting your time. They don't call back. They're not interested. Are any of these things life-threatening? No. We're business owners. Nobody's ever said no to us before. In point of fact, and this is better than commercial, your average federal human is wired for service. They really are. Even if they're having a really bad day, they'll usually at least pass you on to somebody else. Or if you ask them, hey, who else might I be talking to? All right, so be brave. Just this act of bravery and being willing to keep showing up actually puts you ahead of 90% of the people who are busy hitting the email button. Because hitting the email button is safe. You're not being vulnerable. You're not putting yourself out there. Making the call makes a profound difference because we as humans are wired for connection with each other. Federal agencies actually want to talk to buyers for many, many more reasons than you could possibly imagine. Sometimes it takes persistence and creativity. We're going to have some examples for you to bust through to make that easier. When you leave messages, I want you to leave a really friendly message, assuming they're going to call you back when they have an opportunity. Maybe they're a little busy. Maybe you're not the right person. Maybe they're not the right person. But I want you to leave a friendly, approachable message and give a little commercial about what you do and give best value. Once you start leaving messages, you're going to start leaving a little bit different commercial every time. Talk about different best values that matter to that person. And after a while, whether they call you back or not, they're going to know what you do. They're going to know who you are. If they run into someone who needs what you do, they're going to say, Veronica calls me. They're leaving me these great messages that are really positive. I haven't talked to her yet. Why don't you give them a call? I've got lots of stories of people that I have finally talked to about leaving multiple messages that have come back to me, giving me everything about my business, what I do, how long I've been in business, what my best values are, and that they've shared my name with other people. So your voice or voicemail is more powerful than you could possibly imagine. But it's more than, hi, it's Sarah, call me. This is the 4th time I've left a message. It's never a waste of time to leave your friendly, fun, personal, sort of 30 or 60-second pitch about how you can help them. I mean, imagine the idea, the power of voicemail. You have the chance to be literally inside someone's head. What an intimate experience to be right inside their brain for 30 seconds. Why would you not give that everything you've got to be just as excited and engaged to leave a voicemail as if you had them right on the line? Imagine giving somebody that experience. People will forget what you did. People will forget what you said, but people will never forget how you made them feel. Dr. Maya Angelou, your voicemail is that chance to change how you made them feel. Think about it. And that's a power each of us has as human beings. How cool is that? So this part of the guide is all about focusing on some people you're going to be asking for referrals. They don't wake up in the morning going, how can I help George or Lori or Sarah? How can I dump a bucket of cash on their head? They should, but they don't yet. You have to train them to do that. But if you call or come your way, these people that who are already doing business with you, they want you to be successful. Even if they can't use you right now, the power to introduce you to someone else that they know and love, they're doing their friend a favor and they're helping you, even if they can't do business with you right now. So, and sometimes people don't ask for referrals because they're afraid it feels like begging. All right, so write this down and then you're going to practice this. Write it down. My business is growing and we're looking for new projects. My business is growing and we're looking for new projects. Ooh, how exciting. Who wouldn't want to talk to you? And then, if you were me, who would you be talking to? Practice it until it feels good. I had to practice this for about 3 years until I felt really comfortable doing it, but it does. It feels fine. All right. So, all right. After looking at, you want to expand your capabilities and arm your sales team with some of this positive feedback so you can start sharing with your new customers. So you want to have the words, what we've been doing right. If you've been talking to your customers, they're trying to remember what you said, they might shake it out. Hey, do you remember this nice thing from 2 months ago? Is it okay if I use this as a testimonial? Can I give people your name? Can I tell them a little bit about our work together? Make sure you check with them. But you've got a section in the guide for writing up some of those testimonials, some of those 2 or 3 examples, because people want to know you've solved their problem for someone who looks just like them yesterday afternoon. So those stories that you can bring really help. All right. So where's the easiest business to win? This is what we call under radar opportunities. Here's the stuff that your buyer told you about. It might be a micro purchase, something worth $10,000 or less. It might be something you can put on a credit card. In disaster response, it could be a lot more than that. They might have some new requirements coming down, something that will give you a chance to show your stuff, a report, a study, a pilot, an assessment. Maybe we can offer them some white papers or a half-an-hour webinar to assess cyber vulnerability or an overview of where the leading edge is in the product or service or niche area that you're in now. So maybe you can do some data analytics, possibly provide some training. And so it's a little mini training, but it gets you in front of the team and it can make it easier for those projects to jump out. That's also a way to introduce our clients to other subject matter experts. You're already meeting people in this particular meeting. It might be good at something that you might not have, that you might be able to bring them in front of your customers. Start introducing them to subject matter experts in other areas. Go on a call with a partner who doesn't do what you do. What we're hoping is that your clients are starting to see this in you, that you're resourceful for everything related to your field, not just your own specialty. You come across as resourceful, generous, courageous, and having a broad range of your customers' needs in mind. People often call me about things I don't necessarily do, but I have a deep, wide, weird Rolodex. I have referral resources for everything from marine concrete to aviation propeller overhauls. I'm not making this up. You want to be able to introduce them to other subject matter experts as well as to other opportunities. Give them a hand with something else that comes up in conversation as a bit of a tangent, but remember the human connection as well. If you know a lot of people, suddenly they put you on their speed dial on their phone. In the old days, they used to call it a go bag. You know, if there was an emergency, they had to grab their file, then run out and call vendors because in an emergency, their phone is their go bag. So you want to be on that bat phone, especially when they need anything. And in fact, when you talk to them, you first really start to work with your clients, especially the ones that know and love and trust you. Say to them, hey, do you have my direct line on your cell phone? Let's get that in there now, because I want you to remember in your notes about me that not only can you call me about cybersecurity, you can call me about cloud, you can call me about staffing, because I've got a lot of people and I've networked with a lot more, and I want you to be me to be your first call. That allows you to sift through what's an opportunity for you and what's not. It also helps your teaming partners realize they better get on the ball and get your name on their subject matter expert list because you're bringing them business. Consider going into the field or getting on the phone with other people that are selling services that are complementary to your sweet spot. Go on calls together. For example, if you do environmental remediation, maybe you know somebody who does water purification. You go to their agencies, they go to yours, you tag team with each other, and you learn a lot about other people's sales techniques. You can also take the angle of nothing's too small for me. I'm not looking for big projects. Tag teaming can make it really fun. So those are some of the ideas about easy business to win. So what can you give them without getting into trouble? Well, more than you think, which is the cool thing. Now, I love this section because it also reminds me that who can tell me what's in Federal Acquisition Regulation Part 3? What's in there? It's about ethics. So we have to be very careful about what we are bringing to our federal buyers. You can give them a little mini training. You can do what's called a lunch and learn, where they bring the lunch and you bring the learn. When the time comes for in-person meetings, they'll tell you what their rules are. But there are certain things that they could really use when it comes to giveaways, and some will surprise you, and none of them will cost you money. One example, we can help them out with some market research, which gives them the precious gift of time. One of my clients was in line for a recompete, and many months before the RFP came out, her team created a comparison chart listing all the top suppliers in their niche and rows showing the different facets of their services. Of course, they were the only ones with X's all the way across. It's like helping the contracting team get their market research done. Of course, you don't give the file any distinctive name, you don't bold your company's name, but it's genuinely helpful and saves the contracting shop a lot of time. Remember to check your document properties and take the author and authorship stuff out of the document property so your digital fingerprints aren't on there. They can be, it can be, you people in cyber know that you can find stuff, but check the obvious things and clean it up. Another thing you can offer is an educational webinar, something to provide special topic training related to what you do, like I'm doing today. Provide insight into how somebody might identify issues or define requirements that meet their needs. Even if only one person comes to that webinar, they just might ask you to give it again for more people. You're making friends, making your point of contact look smart within their agency. We already talked about wish list proposals. Again, take your name off the document properties, but that gets those things ready just in case they need what we have to offer quickly, quietly, and under the radar. Then thank you letters. I love thank you letters. When I used to work at the Canadian Embassy, I used to keep my whole file filled with these things when it came to be evaluation time. You can write a letter of commendation on your letterhead with your signature, thanking the project manager or program manager or contracting officer for whatever they did to help a project go well. You're going to send it to their manager. Not just an email, not a quick little thank you. I want it on your letterhead, original copy to them, mailed to their boss, mailed with your original signature. That letter's going to go into their permanent file. It could end up framed in their office. This is better than any tchotchke or prize or gift because it can affect future promotions and career opportunities. They will never forget you for that. So thank you letters are crucial, easy, personal, and powerful. And so in the action guide, I've got a little place for you to brainstorm and set down ideas for who can we write thank you letters to, what's their boss, how can we get a hold of them. I know it can feel hard, so we made it easy. Now, how can I actually reach buyers? Well, you have to get specific, right down to the individual federal humans. All right. So you want to find all the buyers you can and really look for the players at all the layers everywhere you do business, particularly in the contract shop and the people in the end user layer. But there are players at 5 different layers. Write them down. I'm going to tell you what they are right now. Okay. You're going to need to know these 5 people every place you want to be successful. Small business specialist, the contracting shop, and that includes both contracting officers and contracting specialists, the end user, and that's a big layer that can include the person sitting in the cube, the program manager, the project manager. But then you've got the stakeholder. The stakeholder is the person that might be the CIO, the cabinet secretary, the base commander. They're not ever involved in choosing you, but they are involved in setting the priorities. They are the ones that other people talk about. Then they talk about the leadership in the agency. And so you need to know who they are, even if you never meet them. And if you do meet them, you're never going to ask them to introduce you to buyers. You're going to, if you're working with their people, let them know their people are doing a great job. You're going to talk to them about their family, big picture, but you're not going to ask them to do your work for you. And the fifth layer then, industry, incumbent prime and competitor primes. Okay. Then there are 6 major public sources everyone can use to gather intelligence on your players at all 5 layers. Some agencies have a staff directory on their website. Usually there's names and contact information on the small business page or pages of that agency's website. Contract listings, contract award listings, and contract opportunity listings at sam.gov as well have points of contact for people who've created, approved, modified those records. Sometimes you get a full email address, sometimes a partial, but it's not that hard to figure out 80% of the time. It's going to take time. Most contract opportunity postings on sam.gov include 1 or 2 points of contact. It's a start. Most acquisition forecast listings include a point of contact. Deep inside the solicitation, you may find information about the identity of the contracting officer's representative. They're the end user who's on the cusp of the edge between the contracting layer and the end user layer. They're the liaison between the two. And don't forget that there are 2.1 million federal employees on LinkedIn. Once you've narrowed things down, you can do a scoop in Google and see what else those people that you've been researching have been up to. You'll see evidence, footprints in excerpts from GovTribe, GovLoop, papers, presentations. Your federal buyers are active people. They are publishing. They're in front of industry. They leave a pretty big footprint a lot of the time. Mauricio, I'm going to pause. Any questions coming up at this point?
I don't see any new questions, Judy.
Okay. Let's get to it. How can I make my company stand out? Start by supercharging your capability statement. You already have that 1 or 2 page document that has all your information from SAM, and you've got your past performance, your contract vehicles, you've linked to GSA on your statement. Now, the minute you update your capability statement, I want you to get it back into people's hands and ask them to look it over and give you feedback. It's like fresh paint on a new car. It's something you're excited about. It's something to ask them to give you feedback on. My friend John Sanders, who is the founder of Washington Technology, used to say, if you want money, ask for advice. If you want advice, ask for money. Start by asking people to give you some feedback on your capability statement. What are they going to do? They're going to read it. How cool is that? People always have advice for you. And so they might not remember your company, but they might search your files for what you do. So one thing you also want to do is you want to change the name, the file name for your capability statement, and put the words about what you do, make that the first words in the file name. Okay. Because they might not remember your company name, but they might say, who is that company who offered data analytics or logistics or cybersecurity? They might look up cybersecurity in their keyword searches on their computer. And there you are, because you named it Cybersecurity by Brandon Green. Okay. Then there's another section that you need, and that's their strategic plan. Did you know that just about every federal agency publishes a strategic plan, and it's available online? The links to that are in the final section of the action guide. You'll want to look at that because that tells you where the overall priorities are, what some of the language is, the special keywords, the unique lexicon to that agency, how they talk about the things they do. So you can show up in calls and conversations speaking the language that is unique to your client and your agency. So for every one of your target agencies, I want you to read it, highlight it, start using that language, those priorities in your voicemails, in your emails, in your white papers. If they have a strategic plan, that shows you what they may be struggling with. It says, here's the priorities for our agency. You're going to get their buzzwords. It's easily 10 hours of work to go find this stuff and make sure you've got the right one. We saved you that time and put them all right there. So you should have some good action items coming out of that. Okay. Next, how can buyers find us when they need what we do? Well, I want to challenge you to just turn that around and say, how can we find them? So we're not waiting for the phone to ring. We need to make the first move every time. All right. So we've talked about a few of those things. You need to put the link to your GSA schedule, your page in eLibrary, right in your signature block, make it live on your capability statement, and pay attention to the words they use to describe what they do. For example, they might call moving an agency restacking. You're going, well, that's moving, isn't it? And going, we call this restacking when we're shuffling around the offices when we're doing renovations. You need to know that. Some agencies may call a particular part of their organization facilities. Some people call that engineering in a different agency. So you've got to be able to use the right language. So next up, let's actually talk about sales calls. You want to get yourself into an energetic frame of mind to be able and willing to do this. All right. It's just critical. You want to sound like this is important and you're eager to talk to them. And mindset is critical. I've had those days. I had one of those days yesterday where I'd realized I wasn't somebody I wanted to be talking to. So I just found a different thing to do and made the commitment to make those calls fresh in the morning when I was ready and my head was in the game and I was genuinely eager to start new conversations with people. It's something to keep in mind. You want to sound friendly, recognize they're busy. They may not be your contact, but maybe they can point you in the right direction. Find a way to be creative with your messages. Treat it like you're talking to them live. And I did a class a while back with a contracting officer asking her why it was people didn't return their calls. She said, the number one reason why I don't return voicemails, she says, most voicemail messages, people are rude to me. Now, can you imagine? Rude. She says, I'm not going to call them back in a hurry. Then you've got tons of government folks that are living far from the office or they're not in normal circumstances. It's really funny. In the wake of pandemic, I'm hearing two different stories. Some people are saying, oh, those government people, they never answer their phones. They're never home. They're working from home. I can't reach them. Then I have another set of people who go, I can't believe it. I have never found it easier to get people on the phone. I reach them. I can't get them off the phone. It's like I'm the only human they've talked to that hasn't been crawling under the floor looking for Cheerios for 3 months. So I have my suspicions about what's really happening and who's making calls and who's not. But being able to be just as excited to leave the voicemail as you would be if you'd reach them and just be willing to be persistent. Does it always help? No. But somehow being in government contracting is an act of faith. You are showing up because you know you have something that can make a difference for them. And you're going to keep showing up because you know that their lives, their mission, their career is going to be better when they choose you. So when you call as well, just be human. Remember, these folks are just human. So relax a little when you want to call them when there's not a bid on the street for what you do. Because otherwise, if it's too close to deadline, they're going to be really stone-faced and be very limited in their communication. So you need to approach people with a really friendly, professional style that's approachable. By the time you get to September, it's too late. It's just that they're slammed. You want to catch them in June, July, August to following up on that wish list. If you're calling in September, at that point, expect to try to get on their calendars for after October 1st, because you sure don't want to be calling them for the first time on September 1st and say, oh, you have small business numbers to meet, because no, they don't. They're already wrapping up things with people who've been in there. They've got those wish list items, and now they're getting closer to just asking people to give them a bid for the file. Now, if you want to touch their heart, make them laugh in September, or maybe send a funny cartoon of somebody overwhelmed, something fun that'll just break through and cut through all the seriousness that they're living through, something they can relate to. You might end up on the wall or they might show to other people and they'll appreciate, gosh, this person gets us. They're looking for vendors who really understand this. And another thing you might want to do is remind them when you're calling in June, July, and August, remind them your offices have extended hours. You're working Saturdays to be able to help them through with some of those extra file filler bids. You're going to write some what we call loser bids every once in a while. So know that you might need it, but also let them know that you're working late. You're not going on vacation in September. If you're waiting for an opportunity that you put as a wish list item and you know it might be coming down the pipeline, don't leave the office in September because they're just going to go to you and they won't get you when they need you. They need to show competition. So every once in a while, you're going to have to write a bid that you know is going to go and for an opportunity will go to somebody else. Sometimes what they need most is to show that they shopped. Be willing to play the game because a lot of the time they're giving you the chance as well to give you feedback on your bid. They're actually giving you that experience to line you up and position you to win. So next, look to the end users. End users are the people that are really setting up the specs, not necessarily the contracting shop itself. So start looking for in LinkedIn and some of the other databases for people who have job titles that your experience shows your typical end users have. Join end user groups on LinkedIn and then get involved in professional associations and start getting in volunteering in their membership committees, on their boards, because you might be working right next to a Fed who's working at an agency where you want to do business. So think about the big picture with your end users, not just for Q4. Okay. And so remember that 99.9% of the time people are genuinely doing the best they can. Ever had a bad day? Of course. So do they. They're federal humans, that's all. So remember as well that, what used to be in industry an average of 6 to 12 instances of contact before you connect or even make it to a sale can now take 15 to 30 instances of contact before they get to yes. So you could only afford to get anywhere close to that number when you focus tightly. Okay. So next up, hey, how can I win without a GSA schedule? Who do you know struggles with this? You don't have a schedule. Somebody's always telling you got to be in GSA. You may be wondering, hey, do I need a GSA schedule? I'm going to crack this code for you because GSA schedules are one of the biggest distractions and distort people's efforts a lot of the time. Okay. So you've got a couple of easy ways to close deals that we talked about already. One of them is the micro purchase threshold, normally $10,000 in times of emergency response, $20,000. Another great option your contracting officer can use is simplified acquisition. In 2018, $22 billion was spent through simplified acquisition procedures. That's almost half of what got spent through GSA schedules. And buyers can spend that kind of money by getting quick quotes from 3 companies even over the phone. Half of that $22 billion was made up of purchases worth over $250,000. That's why you really need to get to know your way around Federal Acquisition Regulation Part 13, FAR Part 13. That gives you the full story, all the details about options contracting officers have for simplified purchasing. Then, of course, if you accept credit cards, you can close deals right there on the spot. They can give you the credit card and off you go. Another option for making purchases easy without a GSA schedule can be teaming. Maybe the agency doesn't buy on GSA schedule, but they have a prime they like and enjoy working with who does things related to your niche. They call the prime contractor on your behalf. Give that person the heads up. You walk on over to the prime with a nice piece of business. It's like their contract is a bridge between buyer and seller. Of course, they're going to mark it up a bit, so you give them a piece of the action. It's like you're going to pay a toll to use their bridge, but it's a way to get in. The action guide includes some of the rules about how they can accept credit cards, so you can take a look at that as well. If you've been frustrated because primes won't talk to you, here's the deal. The easiest way to get the attention of a prime has nothing to do with your status as a small business and has everything to do with what business you are bringing, period. If you're calling somebody and reach the doorkeeper, the supplier diversity specialist in the prime contractor, and you refer to a specific agency, you talk about an opportunity that might not even have been in the forecast, a project that's not showing up on sam.gov. And you say, hey, I was just over to see the Fish and Wildlife Service, and they say they're going to die if they don't have our documentation system for a problem they didn't put on SAM. Want to talk? That's seductive. That's going to get your call returned. Come bringing business. Refer to an agency, a project, a vehicle where they'd like to have business and you want to bring them business. That'll change your whole game. Your federal client calls over to the prime on your behalf and says, I'm sending them to you. I want to use your vehicle, but I want these guys. So it just might happen. The primes will tell you this too. Bring a piece of business. Don't ask for a handout. Nothing's too small for us is one of your new phrases. So, how can I get a first win in a new agency? Start small, be persistent. Ask about another kind of a wish list. What's the project nobody else wants to do? What's that thing that never seems to get finished? Take on that job and knock it out of the park. Superlative past performance is more powerful than a full stack of set-asides put together. Persistence is critically important. Whether you've called them once a week, once a month, once a year, you need to tighten up that time frame. Now, 2 days, maybe if not every other day, until they call you back. Catch them before they get trampled by vendors who are all hacking away at them in the queue for September. Get them on the phone now. If they're not the right person, they'll tell you. They might give you somebody else, but at least you're able to get them to move the ball down the field. What do you have to lose? You're not going to lose all your relationships in intimacy just because you called somebody a couple of times. And if you did, that person probably wasn't your person anyway. Cheer up. So let's talk about momentum. Let's talk about momentum. This is one of these super secret powers. Under topic 9 in the guide, I've given you a little game to give you a sense of momentum. Give yourself a point score for each of the things that you need to be doing regularly. All right. So let's say if you actually, every phone call you make, it's 5 points. If you get somebody on the phone, it's 5 points. Every email you send, you get a point. If it turns into an appointment or a conversation with a person, that's 10 points. If you get an opportunity to write a proposal of any kind, that's 50 points. So keep score. Take a look and see, what's my baseline of activity? What if I adjusted one of these things? How is that going to affect my outcomes? So do a little tracking. You can do it in a spreadsheet. You don't need a fancy schmancy app to do it, but it can start to make all the difference as you're getting a sense that your efforts are starting to get traction. Finally, it's year end. Where are all those fast sole source buys posted? All those things we hear about. Well, if they're calling you in September for a market research bid, it's probably too late. It starts with early conversations, those ones about your best values. When you see these things that are combination solicitation, synopsis, and it looks like they're turning them around really fast, you're looking at somebody bringing in the harvest for seeds that were planted many, many months ago. If they're calling you in September out of the blue, they may be just looking for you to round out their file. If that's the case and you choose to participate, there's no promises. You can't exactly barter. Gee, I'll give you a file filler bid and you promise to meet with me. But realize that you want to be sure to follow up, win or lose, especially get a calendar appointment for mid-October and follow up and build the relationship, because there's always another year. So be thinking beyond September 30th. I have leads. I have conversations with people in my database, with people that go back. The longest one was 10 years. I am not making this up. 10 years of follow-up. And eventually Jackie became a client. And so keep good notes and realize that somebody's always got it tomorrow. So that's the thought I've got. And so we've covered a lot. We talked about setting goals, to write them down and vastly increase. Write them down and have a bit of a plan. Your plan is going to change, but keep working it. We talked about the 12X factor, that somebody who's already done business with you was 12 times more likely to send you more business than somebody you've never met. And we went through 10 tips to close fourth quarter. So set those goals, use the action guide, and pick one tactic you're going to dig deep on for each of the next 4 weeks. And then tell me how it went. I built this action guide so that you can use it. I would love to get your feedback, get your questions. If you've got the action guide, open it up. Ask me questions. What one topic will you focus on? What one thing will you do as a result of this time that we spent together? I'd love to see it and hear whatever other Q's and A's that people have got. Mauricio?
Any other questions? Any questions for Judy? Well, we still have her. We have a few minutes. Well, I don't see anybody. I don't see any questions, Judy, but I will say that, I mean, you provide a lot of very, very useful information. Really, this is the time of year. I know when we were at the agency, this is the time when it would start to get really busy. And you're right, you know, by the time it gets to be August or September, or even early September, it's too late. So this is really the time to get out there and contact people, let them know you're still you know in the game, and just to remind them, because you know a lot of people just get overwhelmed with people contacting them, you know, and then they forget. You know, one thing I will say just from the agency perspective is that it seems, certainly where I was at USAID, over the last few years, the workload for each contracting officer as well as technical people, and small business office, the workload increased exponentially, and the staff did not. The number of staff did not. If anything, in the contract shops, it got smaller because there was a scarcity of COs, and so people have a lot on their plate, and so I think it's particularly important to use some of the techniques that you were talking about.
Wonderful. I know some folks that are here, say Lori Sales and her team had access to this material when we did the 2020, so the 2020 version. I'd love to get your good thinking about what you found was helpful. If there's advice that you would share with others based on your own experience, if you're on this webinar, on this session, if there's one thing that you know you're going to do, one thing that's really important, please share with others as well.
Yeah, and I see some comments in the Q&A that people are going to start calling the agencies and you know, follow up, and just a lot of really, really good information. I see lots of very positive comments, Judy.
Fantastic. And yeah. You can't ask somebody to give somebody else an experience that they haven't had themselves. So I want you to reflect on the idea that you've just had an experience now that you can turn around and replicate and give to somebody else. I'm here giving this presentation because at this time of year, winning fourth quarter business can make a world of difference for you. So I'm here to offer you something that could give you a boost on something that's right in front of you right now. So now flip that over. If you're in your federal buyer's shoes, what is happening for them right now? What are they most concerned about? What could you give them, offer them that could give them a little bit of a boost, make their lives better, their professional life better? Maybe you know them well enough to know they've got a new puppy and they're struggling with obedience training. Maybe they got behind and didn't find a great summer camp for their kids. You could tell them about the climbing camp at Sport Rock in Alexandria. Whatever it is, know your people well enough, and what could you possibly offer to somebody to just make a difference, a little difference? People will always remember how you made them feel.
Judy, we do have one question, as I see now in the Q&A, and that is, what are some good ways to approach research and development projects? And then as a follow-on, for new federal contacts, should small business always have a signed email certificate to interact with agencies through email?
You have, on the second question, you have a better idea than I do about a signed email certificate. I know that things are changing with DoD and cybersecurity maturation certification, but I am not sure that that's necessary to have. I haven't heard about a requirement to have a particular robustness of email signature if you're not doing business inside the intelligence community. Okay, so I'm not positive I know the question. In terms of research and development activities, guess what? Research and development activities and spending is made by federal humans. So research and development contracts are awarded and the contract data is in sam.gov contract data. So go find your federal humans. Get in touch with me. Please connect with me on LinkedIn and let me know. Just put VIP, even just write me a little note, let me know how we know each other. And there may be other resources that I had. Let's pick up our conversation and stay in touch and get to know each other better. I may have other things that can help you that are free that you can use right away.
Great. Thank you for that, Judy. And yes, and for everyone, be sure to comment on Judy's LinkedIn post about today's presentation. I see a reminder from Amy in the chat. So yeah, she put a posting on LinkedIn, and so let's all comment and give some feedback to spread the word. I think that is it again for the questions, Judy. Again, lots of great comments and appreciation for all the great information. We really do appreciate all the informative presentation and the great, the questions and answering the questions that were posed. So with that, let me go ahead and close us. I thank you of course, to Judy for taking the time and providing us great information. We really do appreciate you taking this time, particularly when we're all so busy. And thank you to the participants for attending this VIP VBOC webinar, and to the SBA for making this webinar possible. I'd like to ask that you take a moment to complete the very short survey that will appear on your screen immediately following this program. Your feedback is really important to us. Thank you again, Judy. And thank you to everyone for participating. We wish you all continued success in 2021 and hope to see you at our next VIP VBOC webinar. Thanks, Judy.
Thanks, Mauricio.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Take care. Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you.